So the first thing I want to talk about today is properties of living things. And we need to have a discussion of what it really is to be alive, because biology is the study of living things. So it makes important that we define what the requirements are to be a living thing. So the things you might think of as being living things include, of course, humans, plants, bacteria, shouldn't be forgotten, single-celled organisms like amoebas and mushrooms, and all the small things. We kind of forget that they're all alive too, especially in the plant world. So try not to forget about this. The first property I'd like to bring to your attention is something we call the organizational hierarchy. And this is actually why we started out our regular lectures with chemistry, is because there's different levels of complexity in living systems. And if you look at living things in their simplest components, we're all made up of atoms. We're all made up of matter. Okay? So the smallest units that are in living systems are typically atoms, and those atoms come together to form molecules through bonding. We talked about some molecules that are particularly important to us as living things: carbohydrates, the fats or lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids like DNA and RNA. Then when you start to put those molecules together, you get these very small conglomerations called organelles that are found inside of cells, and each of them has kind of specialized tasks within a cell. The word literally means little organs. And so, cells don't have kidneys and stomachs and lungs, but cells need to get rid of waste, and cells need to digest food, and cells need to process gases. And so they do have specialized regions of the cell that allow them to do each of those things. When you put all those organelles together, of course you have a cell, and cells are the smallest living level of this organizational hierarchy. So if you go higher, everything else will be alive, but if you go down to organelles and molecules, they are not considered living in and of themselves. When you put cells together, you get tissues, and you put tissues together, you create an organ. Organs come together to form organ systems, and organ systems come together to form organisms. Now you can keep going. Organisms in groups are called populations, and their surroundings are referred to as communities. You can keep going with this. Eventually you'll get up to the planet. And so there's lots and lots of levels, but I like to deal with those first 8. Atoms, molecules, organelles, cells, tissues, organs, organ systems, and organisms. And so this is really kind of how we approach this course as well. We start by talking about the chemistry of the body. Next we'll talk about organelles and the cells of the body. Then we'll talk a little bit about tissues. And finally we'll get up into talking about the organs and organ systems that make up our body. So here's kind of an image of the levels of that organizational hierarchy. Just for those of you who are a little bit more visual, remember you can print these slide images off at the center if you'd like. So why is this organizational hierarchy important? Well, organizations provide division of labor, and when you divide the labor up, where each part of the system has its own specialized job and it focuses on those specialized tasks, it makes systems more efficient. It's just like you don't want to run around like a chicken with your head up cut off and try to do everything around your house, although I'm sure you probably do. Ideally, you assign tasks to the different people in your household. Somebody's in charge of laundry, somebody's in charge of the kitchen, somebody gets to clean the bathroom. And when you do each of your tasks individually, it benefits everyone as a whole, and it makes it more effective, and makes your time more effectively used when you do that. This also provides us with a framework for talking about these different levels. You can talk about a level as being composed of the level below it. So, for example, a cell is a group of organelles. A molecule is a group of atoms. And you can utilize it that way. You can also go the other direction and say that this group makes up the next level above. So tissues make up an organ, organs make up an organ system. And so you can kind of go up and down the hierarchy utilizing that framework. Second property of all living things is reproduction. In order to reproduce, you must have DNA. And this really is probably the most fundamental goal of all living things, to reproduce, to pass one's genes on to the next generation and sustain your species. You know, in one perspective, it is actually not as biologically important to live a long time as it is to sow a lot of seeds, if you will. So someone who maybe only lives 30 or 40 years but has 5 or 10 kids is biologically a little bit more successful than someone who lives till they're 60 or 70 but doesn't have any kids at all. So it's something to think about in biology, that how we measure your biological success might not be the same as how we might measure your social success. Third property is that living things grow and develop. This is a change in size, that's growth. And then a change in function is usually development. And often that's a change in function regarding reproduction. So puberty is a change in the ways, it's a transition between the ways that the body functions as a child and the way that the body functions as an adolescent and then an adult. And it's focused around reproduction. So a lot of times development has a core philosophy centered around reproductive function. Fourth property, metabolism. Metabolism is about intaking nutrients so that you can produce growth and energy. Now, whenever we talk about nutrients, it should immediately come into your head kind of a list of things that we're talking about. So that the water, that is probably the most underrated molecule that we utilize. Oxygen. Now, oxygen is a nutrient that we as humans intake and utilize, but there are lots of organisms out there that do not use oxygen and actually are killed if they are exposed to oxygen for too long a period of time. Most of those are bacterial or fungal, very small organisms, not large organisms like ourselves. But it is not a requirement of living things to use oxygen. Not all living things like oxygen. Some of the other nutrients include those macromolecules, carbs, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids, and then vitamins and minerals. We'll talk more about vitamins and minerals in our little nutrition section, but vitamins and minerals are basically elements and other molecules that the body needs to function properly that don't fall into any of the other categories. There's actually two sides to the concept of metabolism. There's catabolism and anabolism. And so when a lot of people think about metabolism, they think about burning the food that they eat. What's your metabolism like? Do you have a fast metabolism or a slow metabolism? How fast do you burn your calories? But metabolism is a double-edged sword. It's a two-sided coin. And so the catabolism side is about breaking down things into its parts. And the anabolism side is about building things from the pieces that they are made of. So these really are two separate parts of the same thing, and you need to consider that both of them are occurring at any given moment in time. Our fifth property of living things is the ability to respond to stimuli. All living things have to react to changes in their environment. It doesn't matter if you're a single cell, you have to be worried about water and salt and food and life. Or if you're a large organism like ourselves, you have to be concerned about, all those same things. Next we have evolution and adaptation. And we really need to get a third term in there for you, acclimatization or acclimation. It turns out that what a lot of us think about when we think about evolution is actually the same as adaptation. And what a lot of us would call adaptation is actually acclimation or acclimatization. So we've got to clarify some terminology here. To acclimate is to make a temporary adjustment, and this is something that individuals do in response to the environment that helps you survive. So, if you live in a really cold climate, maybe you start growing more hair to keep you warmer, and when it warms up again, you grow less hair. Okay? It's a temporary shift, and when the stimulus goes away, you go back to your norm, back to the way you were before. And then there's adaptation and evolution. Adaptation and evolution is something that happens on a large scale in a whole species. And it's what happens when the organisms with traits that benefit them survive and reproduce better than organisms with less beneficial traits. So the good reproduce and the poorly suited do not get to reproduce. Not about survival, it's about reproduction. And so because individuals with certain traits get to reproduce and the others don't, it changes the genes or the DNA that's present in the population. And that is what evolution and adaptation are about. They're about shifts in the genetics of a population. So that's something you really need to clarify for yourself. Last is to maintain homeostasis. And man, this is a $10 word, I don't know what it is. Homeostasis is about maintaining a relatively constant internal environment. Okay? It's something that all living things have to do because we have to deal with conditions as they arrive and determine whether those conditions are suitable for us or not. So we have to respond to the change. And then we have to try to maintain some kind of normalcy within our environment. I've had some students in the past who called this body zen, so to speak. It's about balance. It's about equilibrium, if you will. And so the way that homeostasis works is that you've got some monitoring systems in your body called receptors. You've got them all spread all throughout your body. They feel things like temperature, heat, pressure, sound, things like that. And they send signals back to control centers, which regulate what's going on in the body by sending signals out to effector organs. And those effector organs make changes to the body to either go with the change or prevent changes from happening in the body. So these three pieces of the puzzle, the receptor, the control center, and the effector organ, make up what we call a feedback loop. So we need those three pieces to regulate the body and maintain homeostasis. There's kind of two aspects to feedback loops. There's what we call positive feedback loops and negative feedback loops. And we'll talk about that in just a moment. First, I want to talk about the things that we monitor using these feedback loops. Because a lot of times there's trouble comes in a list for this. So this is both about things that are internal to the body, things like water, salt, nutrients, pressure, temperatures, pH, gases like oxygen and carbon dioxide. And then it's also about external things to the body, things like temperature, light, chemicals, which is where we get our sense of odor and taste. Things in the surroundings that are important to us, like where our body is positioned in space, what we're touching, like there's texture or vibration, things like sound. So really, your body's pretty darn busy trying to monitor all the things going on around it and create control over many of those things as it can. So it has these two different kinds of feedback loops. It has this negative feedback loop, which is all about maintaining homeostasis. So when something changes, like when you start to get hot, your body likes to be, well, theoretically, 98.6 degrees. If you start to go up 100, 101, 102, your body does things to try to cool you back down. So usually, for example, if you get in a fever, you start to sweat. That's the natural response to that. And it works just like the thermostat in your house, where if things are getting too warm in the house, you turn on the air conditioning for heat. And if things are getting a little too cool, you turn on the heat, try to get things back up to that set point. Then you have positive feedback. It sounds like a good thing, but often it's kind of a touchy subject. Positive feedback is not designed to maintain homeostasis. the time when we use it the most is when we have emergency. And it's called positive feedback because when there's a shift in the set body away from that set point, it actually accelerates that shift in an effort to create some particular result that the body would like. So some examples are things like fevers, things like shock and the labor process. So here's an example of shock for you. Shock is a scenario where the body has lost its sense of blood flow to an area. So, for example, I'm, working with the snowblower this morning, and I get my hand caught in the blade, and I chop off my wrist. My body doesn't really know that my hand is gone. What my body knows is that there's no blood flow going past my wrist. There's no signals coming back from my fingers that they're receiving blood. And so what my body does is, well, if my fingers aren't getting blood, then I must need to pump more blood out towards my fingers. And so we'll speed up our heart rate, we'll increase the blood pressure in our arm, trying to get more blood out to the fingers that aren't there. But that's what the body does, because it doesn't know that they're not there. All it knows is there's no blood going to your fingers. Okay? And so it'll make some changes, and it'll go back and check, oh, is there blood going to the fingers now? Nope, because I'm still not getting signals about blood from the fingers. So what does the body do? It'll keep pumping blood out there, and it'll just pump and pump blood out there until there's no more blood to pump. And so you hear about people like bleeding out from injuries where they've had a limb removed from their body and like that. And this is why, because the body will actually pump so much blood to the site of that injury that there won't be enough blood to pump around the rest of the body. And that's kind of the long and short of what shock really is. Fever is a similar situation. Body knows that bacterial infections generally can be either slowed down or stopped by high temperature. And so if you're infected with anything, your body will give you a fever. Now, it turns out that a lot of the infections we get these days are viral as opposed to bacterial. So this maybe isn't the best strategy, but the body doesn't know whether you're infected with a bacterium or a virus. All it knows is you are infected. So, you get an infection, your body says, oh, well, high temperatures will slow down bacteria. Let's crank up the heat in here. And so, you start to get kind of hot, and maybe you start to get the chills, a little shivery, maybe you start to get a little sweaty, and the body goes back and goes, are we still infected with something? And it turns out, yes, we are. Okay, well, let's see. Bacteria don't like heat. Let's turn up the heat a little bit more. And so your body tries again. It gets a little hotter, and nope, those bacteria are still there. But if you're not infected with a bacterium, the body can't actually fix it. So sometimes when you get a viral infection, you'll actually get a very high fever, 104, 105 degrees, so hot that it can actually start to kill your own cells off, get up in that 106 plus range. And the body's just kind of responding as best it can to this process. So yeah, it's an odd situation, but the body's just reacting as best it can to a poor situation. It's one of those too much of a good thing scenarios that we were talking about the other day.